What is up, everyone? It is time for TCR Live. I am joined, as always, by my good friend, Kyler Bird. How are you, Kyler?
I'm personally great. I am football devastated.
Yes, I can relate to that. I think a lot of us are in that place. It has been a rough season.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that in a lot of different ways tonight. You and I have gone back and forth in text and talked about it. One of the most frustrating seasons to endure. Not the worst season.
Mhm.
Weirdly, this might be the best Cardinals team we've seen in 4 years, 3 or 4 years, just in terms of how well they've played as a team. But frustrating, and we'll get into that. So we're here to talk about it. We're going to talk about some of the things that are going on. We're going to talk a little bit about where do we go from here. So we're gonna do what we do, right? Real quick though, I want to say hey to some of the folks in the chat. We have Nick. His mock draft season. I would have never imagined that, right, going into the bye week, we'd already be at a point where, yes, it is absolutely time to start thinking about mock drafts because the season is over, right?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, yeah, technically you can imagine a scenario mathematically where they could win, but like realistically, it's so hard to imagine that happen with all the teams they'd have to pull off upsets against, right? So we got Classy Nasty. What's up, Professor? Appreciate you being here with us, hanging out. Longtime member of our community. We've got Lorenzo. Thanks for hanging out. Hello, Professor. We appreciate you guys hanging out with us. And like, man, weeks like this is times where it's like, at this point, we really appreciate you. Like when the Cardinals win, the chat is hopping. When it's like this, it's not. Sellers or buyers, yeah. I wonder which side they're on. If obviously that's not as big a deal in football as it is in like baseball or basketball, but if there is, more sellers, though. I don't know who we even make sense trading away that we don't want to, that would be someone would be interested in trading for that isn't part of our future. I mean, I guess you could say Calais Campbell if there's a team who really wants to shore up, but yeah, I think mourners is really what we are right now, is mourners, mourning the loss of a season already. But we're going to get right into it. And Kylie, you were up first with the first talking point. Coaching. Losing in the fourth quarter is an indictment of the coaching, not the players. Unpack that for us.
Right. I think what we saw in the first two seasons of this entire regime, Monty Austin-Ford in the front office, and then Jonathan Gannon bringing in his staff, we saw records that weren't great. We saw an improving record, though, always with the background knowledge of, one, it's a rebuild, it takes some time, and two, there were some actual highlights, too, of especially the defense. Nick Rawlis coached defense actually playing above its talent level. That was one of the main narratives surrounding the Arizona Cardinals, and specifically the defense, was that they were playing above their talent level. On paper, these are not super talented teams. And when Monty took over, frankly, the Cardinals roster didn't have a ton of NFL caliber talent anyway. And he faced a very, very tough road of trying to raise the floor of the entire roster to where even your depth players are NFL caliber players. And we haven't talked too much about Monty Austin-Ford or what the front office has done because we've just been focused on game results. And I still believe in what Monty Austin-Ford's doing because I do look at the players individually, and I do think the floor talent of this team is better than it's been in years, minimum since the 2021 playoff run, but maybe even longer than that as far as full depth everywhere. We saw it with the cornerback thing after all top three of the corners get injured in week 2. We actually saw the secondary continue to still be pretty okay because he has spent these 3 years stockpiling young players through the draft in those position groups. And I think that part of the team rebuilding effort has worked pretty well. I do not think that you can look at these 5 losses in a row, this whole slew of results, and say that it is just because the Cardinals are a less talented football team than all 5 of those teams, especially when we're talking about some of them, the Titans, of course. That is absolutely not true. On
Mhm.
paper, we were a significantly better team, and that's why the Titans' loss was so devastating to us and surprising to the rest of the football world. And when you see this situation that's really actually never been seen before, a lot is being made of that recently, of the Cardinals are making the wrong type of NFL history by losing this many games in a row by one score, or this many games in a row in the final 30 seconds. Whatever, pick your stat as far as these terrible records go. Um, that is not because the players on the field are less talented. That has
Yeah.
to be a coaching thing. I don't see a way that you can possibly see these results of fourth quarter collapses as not a coaching failure. If you have a team that can play with these last 2 weeks, very good teams, the Colts and the Packers are both regarded as good teams in the NFL, toe to toe, holding leads against them. The Packers did not lead the game until the last few minutes of the fourth quarter. Not a single time did they lead. That is a coaching failure. There's no way around it. Whatever is happening in Jonathan Gannon's running of the team, this is not a well coached team right now. We're less disciplined than we were in the past. We're committing more penalties than we did last year, and we are collapsing at the moments where we absolutely can't collapse. It's not a talent issue, that's a coaching issue.
You bring up us. We haven't really gone to that aspect of this team a lot. I've been very vocally a big fan of what Monty's, uh, and I continue to think that overall he's done a good job building the roster in the way you talked about. There's a few things we can critique. I think it is fair to say that they haven't done enough to fix the offensive line. I kind of buying the Kool Aid of the way them and that taking that approach. Um, but the guys they've drafted aside from Paris just have not materialized yet, right? Obviously Isaiah Adams has been a frustrating, player that they drafted in the third round, to be a star guard, and that hasn't really worked out, right? They drafted a right tackle, Jones, who's on IR, so I'm not going to hold against him too much. On Gaines has been depth, but they tried fourth round, which when you draft your offensive lineman in the fourth round, you expect them to develop into a starter. That is kind of where you find those guys. And so it's been frustrating. Lorenzo, Jones needs to be traded. He hasn't played particularly. Fortunately, I don't think anyone for Jones, right? But we need a new right tackle, or even promote, Beach, um, I hope, maybe Christian Jones, when he does come back, steps in that. But there are critiques of Monty's work, right, in terms of particularly the offensive line. I think he's done a really good job, through the draft, finding players like guys, in the middle rounds that have become good players for this team, right, or rotation players. There's some higher, there's some guys who have not played yet, like Walter Nolan hasn't played yet. Hopefully he's coming back soon. There's, got some guys who haven't worked out particularly well. I feel bad for him, but our good buddy on the interior defensive line, Darius Robinson, who has continued to play poorly. I know people have been down on Marvin Harrison Jr. I think MHA is going to be fine. I think might be a slow getting there, but overall he's done really good, especially in the building of the depth. Like the floor has been raised. Maybe we need to see the ceiling raised, but he's done some good jobs, even drafting some high talent players. Like especially, you look at the cornerback position, right? Obviously Will Johnson has been really good so far. Garrett Williams, unfortunately, is injured, but has been elite, right? So
Yeah.
Monty, overall, I'm still on board with Monty. He's got to fix the offensive line. I think he will prioritize that this offseason. The coaching is the trickier widget, because I think overall the coaching's has done a good job helping the team get better. Some of like player part of those draft classes working out is player development. And that's on coaching, right? But coaching has multiple parts to it, multiple phases. There's how they develop and teach the scheme, right? I think that part they've done a good job, especially on the defense. Okay. But then you have the discipline side. Well, before this year, I would have said they'd done a good job on that because it felt like the culture was there. But this year, it's kind of not been great, right?
Yeah.
And then there is the play calling, right? And this, and you can also the play design, you can kind of separate that if you want a little bit. The play design, the scheme, and then the play calling, the sequencing. And it's particularly, I think, in the sequencing, and maybe you could argue play design, but with Petzing, but I don't know, the passing is where that's been the bigger question. But like, is it that the play design isn't great, or has it been some personnel fits, or has it been when they're calling the plays, right? Is it the sequencing? I've seen it. We've all seen it. Some of the uh you know um the runs at times when they should be passing. So I want to just mention, I know there's probably if it's sounding a little choppy out there, if there's any issues, internet's been weird. We had to cancel last week, so I'm going to apologize if we don't sound great. Thanks AWS, right? And all that. But so yeah, I think, but there's some issues with coaching. That's a short version, right? I agree with you, and I don't think it's the talent level. The players are, like, listen, Amari DeMarcado, you could, if you wanted to, you could pin that one loss on that one play, and that was a mistake. And I'm not even going to fault the coaches for that. I mean, I get you could say it's a discipline thing, but that was just such a weird head, just kind of head in the sand, head in his butt kind of thing mistake. But so yeah, it's weird. I don't know. The coaching is definitely a question and concern. But I want to also talk about, when we talk about the scheme and the system, I want to bring up something I know we've kind of been talking about, because the quarterback position is, obviously we've talked a lot about Kyler, but now we've seen a couple games with Brissett, and Brissett is, he is the quintessential bridge quarterback. He is a low end starter who you don't want to build long term planning as your starter, but if you need him to start for you while you're in a bridge situation, you couldn't ask for a better bridge quarterback, right? So he's
Absolutely.
capable, but he's just not going to be at the level you want to build a franchise around as a long term fit, right? So, what is his play showing about Kyler Murray's fit, right, in this in this system, right? And from my perspective, when I look at, and I see, Nidius, thank you for being here. If we get rid of Kyler, I want Fernando Mendoza, but I'm still team Kyler though. Like, I've been a Kyler defender for so long, and I will still defend him on all the personality character things people have said,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think that has been some unfair criticisms. I think he's worked hard and done everything they've asked. He has reined his play into the system, but as Nick is saying, maybe they mix like water and gasoline, and not necessarily from a personality perspective. I think Kyler's doing all the right things, but I think from a scheme system perspective, I think what we're starting to see is like Kyler might not be a great fit for this offense, but it might also go deeper than that. Like, I think Kyler's talented. He has all the arm talent in the world. I think he works hard. He tries hard to do what they want to do. He obviously, we know what he can do running. And I think in the right system, right setup, he could be a good quarterback and successful quarterback in this league. And I hope he is. I mean, I am cheering for him, even if it's from afar. I want him to succeed because I think he's done everything he could. But there's some things I've seen watching, the way that, that he's the way that Brissett has played. And the thing I've seen Brissett do that I did not see Kyler do consistently is, I watch Brissett looking downfield, and sometimes he makes the quick read, but sometimes he takes a little time, but he makes a throw. And more often than not, they've been good throws. There have been a few where it was maybe a little off target, or some that, that were off target, but like good reads mostly. and just taking shots down the field and moving the ball. And then when I think about what I've seen with Kyler is Kyler in those situations, he'll take some deep shots and he has a great arm, so accurate, makes some great plays, great throws sometimes. But all too often what I've seen is plays where Brissett will take a little bit of time, find a read, and make a throw. Kyler will take that same time and then scramble or take a sack.
Yeah.
I've just increasingly seen Kyler not making those throws like down the field unless it was the guy was open and it was his first read, or he scrambled, waited, and then something happened, right? And so like what I'm not seeing, at least from what I can tell, maybe someone who looks at the All-22 who knows this better than I do will see something different. But what I haven't seen with Kyler is making the progression, taking the progressions and making that second or third read and making a throw that in on schedule to a guy intermediate and just kind of, like there, it's so hot and cold. If the guy's open, he's making such a great throw, right? And yes, he can make all the throws needed, right? And you don't know if his feet are too happy or right or fear of injury. Like he can make all the throws, but I'm starting to feel like maybe there's a read thing. That if the first read isn't there, then yes, he can if the play breaks down and he makes some time, wait for someone pull a old school Russell Wilson, right? What Wilson used to do better than anyone with the Seahawks is scramble, make some time, and then find the guy wide open because that's happened against us. And Kyler can do that, and he can make such a beautiful throw in that first read. Like his accuracy is really good. His arm talent is really good, but it's it's in between that first read and that broken down play, the on schedule second, third read. I'm just not seeing that, and that's the thing I worry about. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with that. And I agree with some of the other comments that I saw in here. That just on a basic level, I don't think Kyler Murray's skill set, which he has a very unique skill set that can absolutely be successful in the NFL. And I don't think it is a match for Petzing's scheme at all. I just don't. I think what we have seen in these last two games is Brissett, who is a backup for a reason. That's not go crazy. Drives me insane looking on Twitter sometimes, and the people who just out of desperation because they're sad that their team is doing poorly are convinced that Jacoby Brissett is a more talented football player than Kyler Murray. He's not. There is a reason he is a backup. Absolutely. But I do think we see that he, as a style of quarterback, represents what Petzing wants to run this scheme. Because not every scheme is created equal, and not every scheme requires the same type of quarterback. And I just see a massive schematic mismatch between what Kyler Murray is really good at, and if you have a team with the right types of players, right type of offensive linemen, and a scheme built for that scrambling backfield playmaker type of quarterback, he's going to be uber successful. Like, dude won the Heisman in college, has broken records his entire career. He's very clearly an elite athlete, an athlete. Now, Petzing's scheme is, in comparison, frankly, a boring scheme, but that doesn't mean it's a type of offense that can't work either. But it requires the Brissett, I will run the game. I will step into a pocket. I will deliver a throw over the middle of the field, and I'll keep clocking in and doing my job. This offense doesn't need a flashy quarterback. In fact, it runs worse when you have a flashy quarterback that is consciously having to reel in what comes naturally to him, and it shows up in his play on the field when you see him playing a fine game. Our losses when he was starting, I still contend, were not Kyler Murray's fault. He played
Mm-hmm.
fine games, but you can see that stylistic mismatch where
Mm-hmm.
he just on the eye test does not look like he is playing his type of football. And I, like you were saying, to his credit, I think he has genuinely bought into the new regime.
Hmm.
He did everything that he could. I think he is a professional. All the personal stuff is insanely overblown, and there may be some other problematic social undertones with some of the long held hatred of Kyler Murray and the fan base that, well, I guess we don't have the platform to talk about that here on this show.
Right.
But I think he's done everything he can, and I don't think it's ever going to work in this scheme with him. I don't. And if we can find uh, an upgraded version of Brissett, you could probably find success, truly. But then that also means, are you going to stick with Petzing after this season and get rid of Kyler Murray? The offseason implications of this, of choosing the quarterback or choosing the style of offense, are going to completely change the direction of this team for the next few years.
Yeah. There's so much nuance with the Kyler conversation because I think like when people it's been such a polarized discourse. And I for a long time have been a defender of him, an apologist, and recently I've come out just saying not really like, kind of like not hating or being like just kind of saying I think it's time for everyone to get a fresh start, right? But there's so much nuance in that. Like some, when I've said some of those things, some people have said think like they jump to. So you're blaming. You can't possibly blame Kyler for these losses. If you look at the games, gosh, like you must be stupid or blind to blame Kyler if you obviously haven't watched the games. Like I didn't say I'm blaming Kyler Murray for these losses. In fact, Kyler Murray played well enough for them to win every one of those losses. There's maybe one game, the one game they came from back from behind it made it closer than it was. You could maybe, almost say that was on him making it as close as it was, but also part of it was on him those stretches he disappeared. But like he's played well enough from their win. It has not been on him that they've lost. But like at the same time, a quarterback who's more conventional and makes those plays in that middle that I'm talking about between the first read and the broken play, but those on schedule second reads and third reads and doesn't disappear as much, might have won some of those games.
Right.
So Kyler didn't lose the games. He played well enough for us to win. And other players didn't step up, or other units didn't step up enough, or we made mistakes. But at the same time, the nuance with this is a quarterback who played a little bit better or more conventionally at the same time might have overcome what those other units didn't do. So he didn't lose the games, but it just is increasingly feeling like again, with what we see, Brissett is a bridge, a great backup, a very low end starter, and he's looked reasonably good in the system and moved the ball better than
Yeah.
Kyler has. So imagine what happens when you get that prototype who is a better version of Brissett, right? A legitimate starting caliber guy who's more and someone who plays more the Brissett style, but has a higher floor and higher ceiling than Brissett. If you can find that guy, that I think elevates his offense. And Kyler just is so hot and cold. He can do amazing things, but I just feel like it's so the big plays and then disappearing for a long time.
Right.
And I I like Kyler and I want him to do well. And I hope he ends up in a system that uses his skills better. It doesn't seem like that's here. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Now, I think there's an element of just it being a non-winning situation for Kyler, regardless of what happens, because we're talking about how he played okay and he wasn't the reason that we lost any of these games. And then we follow that with, but he also, didn't put the team on his back. Is this really an offense that allows for him to ever be what he actually is at root? We want this explosive, crazy Kyler Murray, but we only want it when we really need him to win the game.
Yeah.
And the rest of the time, he better stick within the system, which he's clearly doing his best in, but is not his natural style of play. So how can he really win in that situation? Either the offense has to hum and go exactly correct, and he game manages just like Petzing once, and you dink and dunk your way down the field, and you score, and you win the game, but you get into a crazy situation, and then suddenly you try to get him to switch tack completely and be like, hey, you're Kyler Murray. You're supposed to do some crazy heroic stuff at the end of the game to help us win. Why aren't you doing that?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, you didn't have a depth of target past the line of scrimmage like all game, and I don't have a passing scheme at all that allows for that. But come on, it's the fourth quarter. Turn it on. You're supposed to be Kyler Murray. So I think there is an element where he legitimately can't win. He is in a style that is not his style of football. He's expected to do that all game, and then you're suddenly losing in the fourth quarter. And oh, you better turn it on. You better be old Kyler Murray, and you better do it right now in the next 30 seconds, or we're going to lose the game.
Yeah.
Like, how is he supposed to necessarily win in that situation?
I think there's legitimate questions about Kyler's fit in the offense. I think Kyler, again, has all the talent, but I think there's some legitimate questions about what he does when it isn't the big player on schedule. But you know who there isn't a question about, Kyler? Do you know who?
Oh, yeah. I think I know who. I
I
think
think
I
this
know who.
guy, Mr. Trey McBride, the
Ah,
lone shining star in this offense. I think there's no question about his fit in this offense or any other offense.
no, Trey McBride is an evergreen football player that you could drop into almost any era of football, into any offense in football, on any team in football, and he's gonna be great. Like, he is the ultimate competitor. I liked a lot of some of the stuff that we saw from him in the Packers game. Ultra competitive. Pissed when he had that third end zone touch that was just a little bit out of his hands. He already had 2 touchdowns that game, and he was still mad about it. And Trey McBride just completely encapsulates everything that is perfect and good about the game of football. He is possibly, hot take, if AVB is in here, he might disagree with this, but um, he might already be close to the best tight end in franchise history. Not that there's a huge list of people competing with him for this. The only true competition is Jackie Smith. And Jackie Smith was from a very different era and played for a lot longer than Trey McBride has so far. But give it a few years and he will be undoubtedly the best tight end in franchise history. And he's, to me, undoubtedly a top 3 tight end in the league, and he's not number 3. So Trey McBride, when you look at the offense, you see good players. We've talked ad nauseum already this year about Marvin Harrison Jr., so we won't tonight because we've talked a lot about that, and I don't think he's a bust. He had a really bad game. He had a case of the yips, and there are other things there. I think he'll be a fine player. But if you just have to choose one off the offense, there's no question. Trey McBride is really the only true superstar game wrecker that this team has right now. And he is just an ultimate pleasure to watch all the time.
Yeah, I mean, there's not enough superlatives to describe who he is. You know, he's ranked fourth in PFF grades for tight ends, right?
Mhm.
You know, he's having just an amazing season. You know, when you look at his stats, you know, overall, you know, he's leading the team in receptions by almost double.
Yeah.
47 receptions at 24, 421 yards, 4 touchdowns. Even the touchdowns he's improved on, which was kind of the thing where he wasn't as, you know, getting as many of those in the past. Based on ESPN, if you look at the projections, like based on the pace, you know, he's on a pace for 114 receptions, 1,022 yards, and 10 touchdowns.
That's crazy.
Right. And like this is in an offense that is not doing a great job passing the ball. You
Yeah.
know, so you know he's legit, right? And I remember like when the Cardinals drafted him, there were fans who were upset because we needed a center,
Yeah.
right? And I remember,
I remember.
and I, you know, the video I did on him, I said, you know, I have a feeling Cardinals fans are going to be glad we had him, and like it's not as extreme as the Dan Marley thing where fans booed him and then loved him later. They
Yeah.
didn't boo McBride. I think fans were a little more like, I mean, okay, we could use a tight end, but whatever. But now, I mean, he is. In terms of popularity amongst the fan base, I think he's right up there with Buddha, right?
Yeah.
You know, And so love him, love his attitude, love his personality, love the way he plays the game. So glad they've extended him. And he's a key thing to build around, right? So 100%. Um, but and then you talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. And Robert's got some comments here. We stat on both quarterbacks now. Marvin Harrison Jr. is still underutilized. It's not a QB issue; it's a coaching issue. Jamar Chase can 23 targets to backup quarterback. And this and that. Some of that's the coaching and the scheme thing we talked about for sure. But there is no question about Trey McBride, such a stud. But I mentioned him as one of the most popular players right up there with Budda Baker, and I want to use that as a segue to the next topic. Is Budda Baker, is he okay?
Yeah.
And I was asking, this was actually a question I was going to ask last week. And last week he had a PFF grade of 54.9. He had a better grade this week of 66.2. But his season-long PFF grade of 51.9 is the worst of his career. Like the next lowest he's had in his career was 64.6 in 2021. He's usually in the 70s. He has had 3 seasons in the 60s, but he's 51.9. 60 is like baseline, right? And so and I get it. PFF grades are not an end-all be-all. They have their limitations. I've talked about them a lot. I believe in their utility, but I also understand data as a social scientist that you have to take it loosely, like that it's a piece of data, it's a point of information, but it doesn't capture everything. PFF grades, what they're really good about is they look at every single play, and often our own impressions are based on the 1 or 2 big plays, good or bad, and that skews our views. Whereas they look at every play that they've done. And that's something. And so I think it's a little less skewed that way. But there are some things it doesn't take into account, like the degree of difficulty of what was asked, sometimes isn't, what was taken into account. And I had Eric Eager on for an interview a while back, who used to work for PFF, was like one of the main guys with PFF. Then he started Sumer Sports. And last I heard he was working with the Panthers organization. And one of the things he talked about was, listen, like the PFF grades, one of the things you have to look at with them is a player like Budda Baker, and that was who we were talking about, is at the time, I believe this is still under Kingsbury, they ask a lot of him in the system, and so his grades are going to kind of be a little bit lower anyway, because he's going to be asked to do more things, and the degree of difficulty of what he's asked, instead of making amazing plays on normal level of difficulty situations, he's going to make good plays on high degree of difficulty situations, and his grades will be down a little bit. And I take that onto account, right? But a grade of 51 point whatever, is really, really rough. And, you look at the stats and even the raw stats, Budda Baker has led the Cardinals in tackles a lot of years. Now, you don't like the idea of your safety leading your team in tackles. You usually want that to be a linebacker, so that certainly speaks something. But he is 3rd in tackles right now. Now it's close. Mac Wilson, Keem Davis Gaither, and then Budda Baker. But and maybe some of that is things improving in terms of what they're getting in the upfront, right? But I don't know, between the PFF grades and the eye test, it doesn't feel like he's making as many big plays as he used to. And, he's had a rough go of it, PFF grades. I mean, his game over games, first game, 75.4. That was fine. But Carolina, 48.6, 59.4, 39.3, 44.0, 54.9, and he's finally back up 66.2. Especially he struggled in the coverage area. Which has not been his highest graded area throughout his career. But so I'm just, listen, he's 29.7 years old, almost 30. When there was the question about extending him, the age was the question. And what's, with his style of play, is it sustainable? I'm not going to say that this is age for sure. Let's see what happens. But my radar's up. Is he okay? So what do you think? Is Budda okay?
It is hard to judge a defensive player like Buda Baker, because he does not fit definition very well, which was sort of that's the thing he's known for around the league. That's what you saw in his NFL Top 100 video of other players around the league talking about him. Was like, you need to know where Buda Baker is on the field because the Cardinals' defense allows him to basically do whatever he wants. And there is a very neat element to that, but I think there's also a difficult element to that. And probably when it comes to PFF grading, that becomes quite difficult because it's never entirely clear on any given play what he's even supposed to be doing. So I'm sure it is then difficult to grade how well he did at the thing that you're not sure what his actual assignment was. And his PFF grade from this last game was an interesting high and low. His coverage was very low, 59.2. But coverage is not really necessarily his thing as a strong safety. He did lead the team in tackling grade at 83.3, which has never been a question. I don't think ever will be a question about Buda Baker.
Mhm.
He is the best tackler on the team. That hit that he laid on Jordan Love, like, actually physically hurt me.
Oh man, yeah.
He also he didn't lead the team, sorry, but he was third on the team in run defense, behind Calais Campbell and Dalvin Tomlinson. So averaging it out, he gets a fairly mediocre grade of 66.2. But it's very possible he did exactly what his job was in that game, and he did it at a really high level. And then he just got caught on two targeted passes that he allowed. He allowed 100% of the balls that went his way, which were just two of them, for 20 yards. So yeah, he didn't do great on that, but was he supposed to do great on that? So that is hard to judge Buda Baker, but by the eye test, it has been a down season for him.
Yeah.
You don't watch him right now and you see like all pro Buda Baker. So something to like keep on your mind moving forward. But he's also still doing a lot of things he's always done really well. He had 3 stops in that game. I don't know enough about the intricacies of defense to know if he's doing his job super well or not, to be honest.
Yeah. And I think it's a good point you bring up about like the different elements because like when you look at his PFF grade for this year and compare it to other years, his run defense grade for the season 75.8. That's
Good.
good. It's a little lower. Like he's a lot of seasons he's right around 80. He's had a few years below that. So it's not the he's had 3 or so seasons lower than this, but it's I guess this is his third lowest run defense grade of his career, but it's reasonable. His tackling grade, he's had lower year, maybe 3 or 4 years that were lower, but it's a right around kind of typical for him, 72.6. Pass rush grade is really high for him this year. It's second highest. Of course, it's a low sample size, 18 snaps, and so it's that here or there, neither here nor there. But the coverage, that's where the big difference comes. His coverage grade for this year is 40.6. The lowest he's ever had before this year was 60.6, 20 points lower than his previous career low. And his
And
averages are in the 60s. So that the coverage is where the drop off has been. Now, is that a scheme thing? Is that something else? I don't know, but like that's where the biggest difference has been in his grades.
right. And that's the thing I think to keep an eye on the most. Just in these 7 games, he's been targeted 24 times and allowed 22 receptions on those. So this is by far his highest reception rate allowed. He's over 90% this year, and he has never been above 84 before. So I don't know if he's doing some different things in the defense this year. I do know we're running significantly more cover 4 and whatnot than we have in previous years. So I don't know, but when he is being targeted, he is not doing a great job on that because
Mhm.
the difference in the coverage grade alone, his worst was his rookie year at 57
Mhm.
as a full season grade, and he's sitting at a 40.6 right now.
Yeah.
That's definitely significant, and it's lowering his overall grade quite a bit.
Want to shout out Grandizer. Thanks for being here, doing what Grandizer does best, being a great mod. Hey Joe, where you going with that mock draft in your hand? Hey Joe, I say where you going with that mock draft in your hand? Yeah, man, I have to tell you, I ran a mock draft this last week. I didn't really put a lot of thought into it, but I jumped into the simulator.
Wow.
Just I
Already
don't
hit
even
that
remember what
time.
it was, but it was maybe a little cathartic kind of thing. But you know, yeah. Uh, Robert Moore, thanks for being here. Been posting a few of your comments when Williams gets back post hype. Hopefully that will allow Buddha to use as a blitz piece. Here's hoping, right?
Which
So yeah,
that's an interesting point there of he probably has been being used differently over the past few games. After the
yeah,
Carolina game, your entire cornerback room is dead for a few weeks, and you
yeah.
have this secondary DB room with various safeties like Buddha and Rabbit and JT. They probably all had slightly different assignments than just Buddha being like heat-seeking missile type of player that he was last year.
Yeah.
So that could very well be a part of it.
Hopefully we see him kind of get back on track because listen, Buddha, like such a fan of him, such a great player. I have, appreciate the way he plays. He plays hard. He's a leader in the locker room and on the field. Love everything about Buddha Baker. There's a reason he's
Hmm.
the player on the banner of the TCR YouTube homepage. So I am a huge Buddha fan. I hope he's okay, but we have to acknowledge the play hasn't looked like we're used to,
Yep.
right? But hey, here's the good news, Kyler.
What's
You ready
that?
for this?
Yeah.
We're not losing this week.
Oh, praise. We could find a way to lose the bye week
That's
if any
true.
team can.
Yeah, don't tempt fate. Yeah.
No, 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 no.
I I didn't run this by you, but I think we're going to be doing something here on TCR looking as or kind of like a state of the team, sort of what's next during the bye week. So there'll be more details coming from that, talking to some of the folks that who also are part of the TCR family here. But yeah, this is usually when you lick your wounds and kind of prepare for the stretch. But really, sadly, what we're really doing is really licking our wounds and looking at what the future holds, right? What the
Mhm.
changes that are probably going to be coming for the team, hopefully for the better, right? Um, so that's kind of TCR round. Listen, we might we might be having a little bit of a collab with some of the other folks, so we'll have some more details coming about that. But you know, some change is going to have to come. But and I tweeted about this, and this, you know how it is. You do a lot of tweeting. You usually have this one tweet that kind of gets more views than your other tweets, right? And
Yeah.
that's the one for the week. And for me, this was the one, and it was something to the effect of, what's so frustrating about this team is they're not that far from being good. I mean, they're not a good team right now, but like they haven't lost by more than 4 points. And some people took that the wrong way and then projected that them making excuses or saying, well, so all we need is a few stops. We're tired of hearing that all we need is a few adjustments, and that wasn't the point. Like there's a big failure because this team should have been a lot better than that. Right. So they are missing on capitalizing on those things. So there are things wrong that need to be fixed. But the whole point of that is what has made this so frustrating is that they have been so close and they haven't capitalized on that. The talent, as we talked about earlier, the floor has been raised on this talent level. They've got the talent to win. They have had injuries. A lot of teams have injuries. We've had a lot, but I'm not making an excuse because they built enough depth that they have put themselves in positions where they had a chance to win. And if you're in a position where you have a chance to win, like they have, you should have figured it out,
Yeah.
right? Even with the injuries. Now, do we have a better record if we didn't have the injuries? Maybe, because maybe some of that talent that would be that much better would have overcome that. But I'm not making that as an excuse because they were close enough that they should have figured it out, right? And Calvin, thanks for being here. Long time part of our community, the OG Calvin. Rough month for our Cardinals. A play here or there could have made a difference yet. Here we are again, right? Exactly. So like, and some comments and stuff on that tweet, and like one person comment, I forget who their name, so I apologize for that, but and I kind of agree with that. It was like not real. there are a lot of people out there who look at where things are at, are wanting to go nuclear on this team, blow it all up. Like, we need a full new rebuild. Like, it hasn't worked. And to me, that is such an emotional reaction because we don't need to blow it all up. Monty has done a good job raising the floor on this team.
Yeah.
There's a lot more depth on this team. There is talent to work with, some legit players. They're so close. Do they need a new quarterback situation? I mean, you and I have both kind of gone the record saying probably.
Yeah.
Do they need a new coach? I'm not there yet, but I'm not saying for sure no. I do I think JG deserves another chance? Not necessarily, but do I think if we gave him another chance with a different quarterback situation and Monty fixes this offensive line, do I think they'll be better next year? I do. I think they're close enough that, like, if Monty fixes this offensive line, which, yeah, I think he's going to approach the offensive line the way he approached the defensive line this last offseason. I think he's going to look at that as the unit he needs to fix. I think they're going to fix the offensive line and continue to add talent on defense and probably add another receiver and maybe do something about the quarterback situation. So does JG deserve another chance? Maybe not. But if he gets another chance, do I think the team will be better? Yeah, because I think Monty's going to fix what they need to fix, and they're going to be good enough to be better. Is it going to be as good as we deserve or want it to be? Maybe not. But like the ray of hope is this team. I know people are tired of hearing one more year, and I'm not trying to be a one more year person because I'm not saying they deserve another year. But I do think they'll be better in one more year. I just do. And that's more faith in Monty than anything else.
I'm with you on still believing in Monty. I do. I think he has done a good job with a train wreck of a roster that he inherited. And I also don't believe that this coaching staff, other than Nick Rawlis, deserves another year necessarily. But if they get one, and you finally, I also hate saying next year, but finally have all the right players for exactly what you want to do in place, then yes. And if then it still doesn't work, absolutely you have to fire everyone. Yeah. 4 years in and it doesn't work, and you've rebuilt a roster almost complete top to bottom, like no players left from the old regime, then yeah, everyone has to get fired if it doesn't work next year.
I like this question. Grandizer's got a good question here. So, who are the top 3 to 5 players the Cards, like, because we're definitely having to look at next year at this point, right? Yeah. So who are those 3 to, because there will be some turnover, right? There's going to be some players who probably won't be here next year. Who are the so let's go with 5. Let's identify 5 players that are absolutely, these are the guys you are building around. And why don't we go back and forth? We'll just we'll get a total of 5, and I will let you go first.
Paris Johnson Jr.
Yes.
He's one of the best tackles in the league right now. Very underrated because he's on a bad team at the moment. PFF, he's grading very well, and he's just holding his own against some pretty good players. When the Packers, very quickly, to their credit, because they have a good coaching staff, determined, hey, let's not run Micah Parsons against him every down because this is a pretty good tackle. And then they switch Micah Parsons to the right side of the line. Boom, he has like 6 quarterback hits and 3 sacks. But Paris Johnson Jr. has been playing really well this year, I think. He's a cornerstone of the future, I think.
Yeah, he is the 9th highest graded offensive tackle, and that is between both left and right tackles.
Yeah.
Right. So there's a few right tackles in that list. So, he's a top grading as a top 5 to 7 left tackle.
Yeah,
right?
He's incredible this year.
So he's been solid. So I agree that he is absolutely on that list. I'm going to go with the next obvious one, and that is Trey McBride, right?
Of course.
There's no question about Trey McBride. We've already spent plenty of time talking about him. So who is your next one?
That feels crazy to say this early. Will Johnson. From what we have seen, let's take away those really ridiculous ticky-tack penalties that he got in this last game. Absolutely insane, half of them. But he legit can be a lockdown corner, I think. Young guy, and you can still have some concerns maybe about the longevity of the medical situation. That's not really a top of mind concern for me.
Mhm.
I think Will Johnson, especially as a rookie, is has to be part of the defense that you build around. He shares that 1A 1B with Garrett Williams.
Well, I'm just going to take the 1B Garrett Williams, right? I
Yeah,
mean, that's so obvious to me. Like, because he's got injured so early, we're forgetting about him sometimes, but he has been so good for them. So good. And to me, like, I'm excited about the future of this cornerback room between those two.
yeah.
Max Melton's still hot and cold. We'll see. But like, with those two, you got those two, you can work with Melton or Keytrell Clark or whoever,
Hmm.
right? You can work with the third one or Starling Thomas when he comes back healthy, whatever. But those two are, I'm so excited. So who's the fifth one? This is the tough one, right? The toughest one. The other top four seem obvious, right?
I mean, it does feel insane to not say Marvin Harrison Jr. because he was the number 4 overall pick. But and I think he'll be around,
Mm-hmm.
but in my heart he's not like a cornerstone of the team. Sadly,
Not
it's one,
not
one of
yet, at least,
yeah,
right? He
one of the
hasn't.
great frustrations of this year so far is that he doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, as Robert says, if you give him 8 targets a game, yeah, right.
uh, yeah, yeah.
And we got Midwest. Is that our buddy Aaron?
I think it is. Yes.
Midwest Aaron
Did you just
will.
include a punter in there,
He
Aaron?
did. Punters are
Okay,
people too,
they are, but uh,
technically.
I don't mind Aaron's choice of Rabbit there. If we're going with just having an incredible young secondary, Rabbit has a lot of potential. He's made some mistakes this year, some notable mistakes, but I think he has a lot of potential. Man, fifth one. I don't. I also want to say Yalta Froholt, but he's just getting older,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, he's been so good for them. He is 29.
which isn't crazy for a center.
Offensive lineman. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not crazy. I'll choose one and you choose one, and then
Okay.
we'll see which one actually is the best. I'll take Froholt.
I will tell you, to me, it is definitely a coin toss between Rabbit and Marvin Harrison Jr. I think Rabbit is going to become that lead safety, right? When Buddha and or we've talked about this, like Jalen Thompson next year of his contract is a void year, so this is essentially last year of his contract. So if they don't, I've said in the past, I think this is last year with this, not because I don't like him as a player, I love him as a player, but I just don't think they're going to put that much money into the safety room.
Agreed.
Um, Buddha has another year or two on this contract, probably another year before you really look at the likelihood of moving on from that contract. So Rabbit is the future, but I am going to put faith in. I would put faith in Marvin Harrison Jr. and go with Marvin Harrison because I believe I've seen enough flashes. He is that fourth overall pick, and I believe he's going to be that guy when they get their offensive stuff figured out.
I agree, and I switch my vote to Marvin Harrison Jr.
Okay, but don't forget how much Gilk of a weapon Gilk is when he's healthy.
Yeah, well, hopefully you don't have to punt that much in a perfect world.
Yeah, right. But it does. We for Marvin Harrison to work out, we need to stop being so conservative when you lead, right?
Hmm.
So um, there's some nice pieces here, and I do think this team. I still believe in the future of this team, and it's mostly about Monty and what he's done. And I even if like they move on from the coaching staff, I believe in sticking with Monty. I just think he's done such a good job of bringing grown-ups into the room where there
Hmm.
weren't. Katon Crawford has played well on limited snaps, so and that's another
Yeah,
interesting player. Been more, he has been more of a special teams kind of guy is what you anticipate, but he has gotten some snaps and played reasonably well on those limited snaps. Let's see, trying to bring him up. See how many snaps he's had. Catan Crawford, I mean, he's graded really well, 91.6 grade, but it's only on 31 total snaps. So it's very limited. But have some hope for him, right? Aaron saying the trade to get Harrison was in hindsight barely brutal because we lost next to first rounder. Yeah, of course we traded back to get that extra first rounder, so and it was a back then back up again, right? So, um, but yeah, I think listen, I've been a big believer in Monty. I do see a few critiques with how he's tracked the offensive line. Maybe there've been some miss on some draft picks, but every GM has that. I think what he's done has been overall really good. So you know, it's frustrating. We expected to be talking about an exciting team that was had a good start to the season because the early part of the season was the easier stretch, and that here's hoping they can keep it up for the rest of the season. And here we are, 2-5, and going to the bye, and it's so disappointing. But we've been Cardinals fans for a long time. We knew what we signed up for.
We did.
We did. Well, we're approaching that hour time. Kyler, any parting thoughts, and then let folks know where to find you.
Well, I am disappointed that we've already lost hope for the entire season, but as a realist, it's over. We're cooked. We're at least playoffs are gone. They're done. Now this coaching staff needs to fight for its own life and prove something in the remaining 10 games of the season. It's kind of nice, honestly, being on bye just to get a little bit of a mental break from the despair of seeing our team find new and exciting ways to lose in the fourth quarter. Like you said, there are some nice pieces here. I won't give up hope of the future because that is what sports is. There's always hope for next year. I just hate that next year has arrived in October. But you guys can always find me on Twitter. I have not tweeted as much recently because I don't want to just go on there and tweet despair all the time. It's not fun for me. It's not fun for other people to read. We all know the reality of the situation. But I appreciate all of you guys that come into these streams every week. And even if it's not fun to talk about, it's nice to commiserate with your fellow fans. So appreciate you taking time out of your lives to listen to us. Always much appreciated.
As always, thanks for hanging out with us. Real quick, Chad, thanks for jumping in here. And it just jumped in. So I always want to just say hey to all the folks, at least once, who've been here hanging out with us. So, yeah. You know where to find me, YouTube, Twitter. Watch for what we're doing next week for the bye week. But, at least we have each other. It's not about the wins and losses. It's the friends you make along the way.
It is.
So thank you all for hanging out with us. We'll be doing something in the bye week. More details to come. But everyone have a great night. Be safe. Be well. Enjoy your bye weekend off. Peace.